My dear fourth grade children, how are you, ma? Are you fine? I hope that you are doing very well. Children, we stay in your home, so be happy. Let us start to study social online class. Today, we will see that the history first lesson. That is lesson 8. The title of the lesson, Timelines and Calendars. Already we have completed the geography lessons 1 to 5. So today we will see that first lesson of history. That is page number 80, book page number 80, lesson number 8. The title of the lesson, Timelines and Calendars. Okay, ma? Okay. First of all, what is history? Yes, history means study of past events. History is the study of past events. This studying history helps us to make sense of our past. If we study the history means we understand the past events, what happened in ancient period. Okay? What is geography? Geography means already we have learned. Geography means the study of earth, the climatical, political condition of the earth and the environment. That is a study of geography. But at the same time, what is history means? That is study of past events. The study history helps us to make sense of our past. Okay, ma? Today we will see that timelines and calendars. What, ma? Timelines and calendars. Okay. Okay, now we see that in order to understand how things around us change, we look at time periods. Time is always moving ahead. So, historians have devised ways to put events in order which help us to know when things happened in the past. Okay, this time is always moving. So, historians have devised ways to put events in order. Time is always moving ahead, it can't stop, it always moving ahead. So, only the historians devised ways to put events, the important events, in order which help us to know when the time happened in the past. We already studied that earth began long time ago. The life on the earth began long time ago. That's we have learned. You also know that history is the study of past events. Study history helps us to make sense of our past. Okay, now we are living on 21st century. So before the centuries, what happened that we study in the history. Now listen here. What is timeline? Your lesson is timelines and calendars. What is timeline, ma? What you have created in the activity above is timeline, which records your school events that took place last year. Year, what are the importance that took place in our school life? Similarly, we can arrange dates in history to get a record of events that took place in the past. So, by doing this, we know what events happened in the past and when did they happen. Such an arrangement of events is called a timeline. So, what is timeline? Sema? That is what events happened in the past and when did they happen. Such an arrangement of events. Such an arrangement of events is called a timeline. A timeline arranges events and dates of the past in order to which they took place. Okay, timeline arranges events and dates of the past in the order in which they took place. It follows a sequence of earliest to latest. So, the earliest dates and events is recorded first and the latest dates and even the last. Okay, can you clear it? What is timeline? That is what events happened in the past and when did they happen. Such an arrangement of events is called a timeline. Okay, so a timeline arranges events and dates of the past in the order in which they took place. Okay, it follows a sequence of earliest to latest. The earliest date and event is recorded first and the latest dates and event the last. Okay, so now our calendar, we are using that. Both the calendars and clocks help us to keep track of time. How do we counting the years? How do we count the years? That is, both calendars and clocks help us to keep track of time. Clocks tells us how much time has passed between events in a day. Calendar tells us how much time has passed between days, weeks, months and years. Okay. So timeline in your class also all the periods timetable is given. Isn't it? Timetable. First period what subject? Second period what subject you have? That is it. Everything we are arranged in timetable. Okay, so timeline also you now understand that all the events happened in the past. Past means the last day or last year or last centuries. Everything past. And when did they happen? Such an arrangement of events is called a timeline. Okay, now listen here. Now we use the calendar. These calendars tells us how much time has passed between days, weeks, months and years. Okay, the 19th, 20th and 21st centuries are part of the Gregorian calendar. We are use Gregorian calendar. This calendar is originally from Europe. This calendar is originally from Europe. We use the calendars. The name of the calendar is Gregorian calendars. This calendar is followed from 19th century onwards. This calendar is originated from Europe. For people here, the birth of Jesus Christ was the most important event in the history. So the numbering of years in the calendar starts from the time of Christ's birth. Okay. The calendar is Gregorian calendar. Name of the calendar is Gregorian calendar. This calendar is originally from Europe. This Gregorian calendar means that's very important for the birth of Jesus Christ was the most important event in history. So the numbering of years in this calendar starts from the time of Christ's birth. Okay, this numbering the years in the Gregorian calendar, that is after the birth of Christ. Okay, now listen here, ma. The list of events shown in the timeline on the previous page. Now similarly, the year of when Lord Jesus Christ was born is taken as the central point in the timeline of the human history. It is taken as the year 1 CE. CE means C denotes common, E means era. Okay. Dates are counted forwards from the year when the Lord Jesus Christ was born. It is called the Christian era or common era. Dates are counted forward from the year when Lord Jesus Christ was born. It is called the Christian era or common era. Events which took place after the birth of Christ were written with. Now listen here. First we are see that after the birth of Christ, the year 1 on the timeline. In your book you have one timeline is given, the page number 81. All of you see that. The year 1 on the timeline represents the time of Christ's birth. Okay, this year after the birth of Christ are counted in normal way. So after the birth of Christus, the timeline counted is normal way, going forward from 1. These years are written with the letters CE, such as 2000 CE or 1857 CE. This CE stands for C for common, E for era. All the centuries that have jumped along. Now listen here. After the Christ birth means the timeline is we can count it in the normal way, going forward from 1. Okay. These years are written with the letters CE. CE means Christian era or common era. Dates are counted forward from the year when Lord Jesus Christ was born. It is called the Common Era. Events which took place after the birth of Christ are written with CE. Okay, can you understand now? Then, before the birth of Christ. History means history goes backwards, backward events before the birth of Christ. This number and the years before his birth, the years are counted backwards from the year 1. Okay, now listen here. After the birth of Christ means the years after the birth of Christ are counted in the normal way, going forward. But before the birth of Christ means the numbers and the years before the birth, the years are counted backwards from the years, backwards from the year 1. Events that took place before his birth are counted backwards from 1. The time before the birth of Christ is known as before Christ or before Common Era. That is, the letter denotes BCE. So, after the birth of Christ, that is known as CE. C for common, E for era. But before the birth of Christ means that is, how to say, that is BCE. BCE means before common era. Okay. Okay, ma. Now see that. So now we understood the timeline, a tool to study history, and how do we count the years, isn't it? So BC years 500 BCE comes before 100 BCE. But in the CE years, 500 CE comes after 100 CE. Now listen here. In this, so it is very, very important how to count the timeline. Timeline, now listen here. This after the birth of Christ means that is very easy. The years after the birth of Christ are counted in the normal way. Okay, after the birth of, that is very, very important. After the birth of Christ are counted in the normal way. That is going forward from once. Okay, these years are written with the letter CE. At the same time, before the birth of Christ. Before the birth of Christ means, that is, we know history goes back even before the birth of Christ. To number of the years before his birth, the years are counted backwards from the 1. All these years are before the birth of Christ, they are counted backwards, and you have BCE written after them, such as 100 BCE, 200 BCE, 300 BCE, etc. At the same time, these years are after the birth of Christ, they are counted forwards and have CE written after them, such as 100 CE, 500 CE, 200, 300, 400. Just we counted forwards. But 500 BCE comes before 100 BCE. Okay, so because we counted backwards, so 500, for example, 500 BCE comes before 100 BCE. Okay, because this is a past events, we counted backwards. Starting first 500 BCE comes before 100 BCE. Okay, but in the CE years, 500 CE comes after 100 CE. Can you clear it, Ma? Now, this Gregorian calendar is now used all over the world. So, now every day we see the date, date, month, and month also. Every day we see the date and day. That is, we use the Gregorian calendar. So, we know this calendars is very important because it tells us how much time has passed between days, weeks, months, and years. We follow Gregorian calendar from 19th century onwards. We use this Gregorian calendar. Okay, ma. So today we start the new lesson from history. So history means we know that is the study of past events. It helps us to give the knowledge of the sense of past events. Studying history helps us to make sense of our past. Okay. First of all, we study that timelines. What is timelines? That is, for example, you record your school events that took place in the last year or before the last year. You took what are the important events happened and when did they happen. 2 years before means also when the month it happened. You record it. That is a timeline. It is very, very important. By doing this, we know why it is important means by doing this, we know what events happened in the past and when did they happen. That is very, very important. By doing this, we know what events happened in the past and when did they happen. Such an arrangement of events is called a timeline. A timeline arranges events and dates of the past in order which they took place. That is also very important. These events and dates of past in the order in which they took place. You also prepare your own timeline. In which year you born, before what happened or after what happened. That is your own timeline. That is very interesting. And also we know that what happened in and when did they happen. It is very, very important. Timeline is very, very important one. Yes, now then we know that how do we count the years? That's the use of calendars. So this calendar tells us how much time has passed between days, weeks, months, years. Then timeline, how do you prepare your timeline? That is, for example, your birthday. So you find out the timeline after what happened, your birth, and before what happened in your families. That events you mention, that is your own time. line. Okay, ma. Today I will give this complete portion. Next class I will complete it. Today I will give the book exercise from geography, the last lesson, fifth lesson. So you copy it neatly, and booklet question answer also already I given. That also neatly copy it. Okay. So next class we will continue this lesson. Okay. Okay. Bye, ma. Thank you.